Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek. Let there be live. And now on to the show. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sports Speak Live, powered by SeatGeek. Promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word, $20 off your first purchase. Starting our fifth calendar year of this show, and we kick off 2024 right now. I'm Eddie Kalegi. Tim Moore not with us for this episode. We do have Rahill Jaiswal, though. Next episode, we'll be doing an NFL postseason preview with Tim and Matt Sims, so you'll want to stay tuned for that this weekend. But Rahill, let's get right into it and talk some NFL before that episode. Eagles Giants happened this
Yeah.
past week, and you were texting me. Many people were. The Eagles looked awful again, and it really seemed that this team hit rock bottom. They've gone 1-5 to close out 2023. They lost AJ Brown to injury in this game. They were already down Devontae Smith and DeAndre Swift. Plus, Jalen Hurts got his finger messed up. They gave up 24 points to the Giants, who were rotating quarterbacks in the first half. It was not pretty. And now the Eagles are in a situation where they have to go play Tampa in the wild card round. And I don't know how to feel about that game at this point with the way they're playing right now. It's been completely,
Yeah,
it's been completely pathetic. I mean, simply.
yeah. I would, if I were an Eagles fan, I would not be feeling confident at all. And the main thing that kind of stood out to me about Sunday's game was just how bad the offense is. Like, we all know that the Eagles defense has been absolutely horrible. So I knew that the Giants were going to get yards against them just because, they ever since the mid defensive coordinator switch from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia, it's gotten even worse. I don't know what Matt Patricia did to get the defensive coordinating job, because you look at his last couple stops outside of New England in Detroit, he was absolutely horrible. So I don't know I understand Sean Desai wasn't great, but it's gotten worse. But the way the Eagles offense looked was absolutely horrible. This offensive line is clearly not the same. The Giants got pressure all day when Jalen Hurts was in, and no receiver could get any sort of separation. And then you factor in even AJ Brown, even though pass he did get hurt, he did fumble the football. So it's everywhere you look. This team looks like they've quit on their head coach. It looks like whatever Nick Sirianni is telling them, it's just not working. I mean, it's bad when AJ Brown has to call a players only meeting entering week 18 to get everyone to believe in the coach. I mean, this is week 18. How are you? The fact that a players only meeting is needed to be called to try and get everyone to believe in the head coach, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about where this team is at. And Tampa, I mean, yeah, they didn't look great closing out the division, but we have to give full credit to Baker Mayfield because he has had a very good season. I've been heavily critical of Baker Mayfield. I think everyone has the way his career ended in Detroit, in Cleveland, how bad he was, but he's had a heck of a season, and they still got some great playmakers. Mike Evans is still there, Chris Godwin. That is still a really good team, and now you got to deal with the ferocious D-line coming out of an Eagles offensive line that just seems to can't get it right. I mean, I'd be very surprised if Philly goes into Tampa and gets a win.
Yeah, Philly did go in there earlier this season, 125-11, but that was a long time ago, and they look very different. And again, I'll harp on this like I did a couple episodes ago. Matt Patricia is not good at his job. And I
No, he's
don't
not.
understand. Sean Desai, I don't really think was the big problem here. I said from the beginning of the season that I had some concerns about the Eagles defense because it was a mix of really young, raw talents from Georgia from the last 2 years and really old guys like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. There aren't many people on that defense, frankly, in the prime of their careers besides Hassan Reddick. So that really created a tough situation for whoever the coordinator was going to be. And I don't really think Sean Desai's scheming was all that bad this season. And the Eagles defense was a big reason why they started 10-1. Making this random switch to Matt Patricia, who is the same defensive coordinator who gave up 28 points to the Atlanta Falcons in the first half of that game before they choked, and gave up the most yards ever in a Super Bowl in his final game as the Patriots DC to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know what that accomplishes. I think there was much more issues with the play calling and the decision making on the offensive side of the ball with Brian Johnson, because this team runs the Alabama special at times when you're 5 yards away from a first down and you decide to run a QB draw and screen passes on third down, wide receiver screens on third and long. I mean, what are we doing here? So
Yeah.
it's bad. And I have no confidence in this team right now. And I just don't know how many more times I can take this with my teams and seeing this over and over again, where a team starts off the season well and falls apart before the end of the year. It's happened this year with the Eagles, happened last year with the Nets. It happened 2 years ago with the Nets before they got swept by Boston. It happened to Rutgers basketball last year. Every team I root for gets off to great starts and then they just crash and burn in the final month of the season. And it's happened yet again. And right now with the Eagles, I'm getting kind of the same vibes I had 4 or 5 years ago, that playoff game against Seattle where they ended up down to Josh McCown. This team just really limped into the postseason, and I think the Bucs are truly a dangerous team. And Baker Mayfield has proven that he can win playoff games before. He almost beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and also, I mean, he's also just had a very good season in general. But yeah, I don't know why they decided to switch to Matt Patricia. I thought with the way his tenure ended in Detroit that you would stay away from him. I mean, they were dead last in almost every single defensive category with Detroit. And you talk about Sean Desai. Yeah, Sean Desai, he had some issues, but also you have to realize this is also an Eagles personnel issue. I mean, you lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. James Bradbury's getting up there in age. In the secondary, outside of Darius Slay, you really have nobody. Brandon Graham is toward the back end of his career, so you can't really expect him to take over a game like he used to. And now all of a sudden they're dropping Hassan Reddick in coverage. I mean, it doesn't make really any sense whatsoever. Sweat has seemed to take a step back. Jalen Carter also, he has seemed to take a step back in the development. It's just really shocking what has happened to this team. And I don't know if Jalen Hurts is playing hurt. I mean, there's been rumors that he's been playing with a knee injury this whole season, but we are seeing when the Eagles can't run Jalen Hurts in that QB draw effectively, he still has some issues with his accuracy. It's gotten a lot better from when his career started, but there still needs to be a little more development, because if you take away Jalen Hurts' legs, it's tough for them to move the football really at all. And for some reason, they just decide not to run the football.
Yeah, I don't get it. And I don't understand why Rashad Penny was signed if he wasn't going to be used until basically the final week of the season. Makes no sense to me. And also why Kenneth Gainwell was the starting running back coming into the season when you had both Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift in your running back room. But I digress on that. We'll see what happens. Before we get into some of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, again, next episode will be our full NFL postseason preview. But Rahill, there's some compelling matchups, I think, in the wild card round. Chiefs and Dolphins should be interesting. Kansas City's had their problems. Miami chokes away the AFC East, but Tyreek Hill gets to play against his old team. Packers get into the playoffs. They face Dallas, who have had some woes in the early rounds of the playoffs the last couple of years. And how about Matt Stafford going back to face off with the Lions in Detroit? And then Browns Texans too. Joe Flacco, CJ Stroud. I think both of those teams have the potential to go on a deep playoff run. So of these matchups, which ones do you have your eye on most?
Just based on the storyline, I would say it would be the Rams versus the Lions. Think about the first playoff game at Ford Field in Detroit, and Matthew Stafford is going to be the opposition quarterback. It's going to be really interesting to see how that game shakes out. Also, we get to see a lot Puka Nacua. We get to see him in the postseason. Two really high-powered offenses. People don't realize how great the Lions offense has been over the last 2 seasons. The only issues last year or the year before was defense. They've seemed to shore that up on defense, and I think the Lions earned a lot of respect for the way they played the Cowboys. I think coming into that week, most people were like, hey, yeah, the Lions, they're 10-4, they have a good record, but are they actually legit? And then to basically, let's be honest, they should have beaten Dallas. Obviously the controversy with the last call. For them to go in there and should have beat Dallas, who had won 15 straight at home, I think that earned them a lot of respect. So I think that game is going to come down to the wire. We're going to see. That should be a really fun game. I think the Rams also are a really fun team to watch on offense. They've got 2 great stories with Williams out of the backfield, Puka Nacua as well. Cooper Kupp, people forget he is still there as well, and Matthew Stafford I've always said is an unbelievable quarterback. So I'm going to be really looking forward to that one. But Chiefs Dolphins should also be really interesting. We're going to see they played in Germany. Can the Chiefs kind of figure out the offensive situation? And we'll see what happens with the Dolphins. I know they're injured right now, but the drop off in offense toward the latter part of the season has been really something difficult to watch if you're a Miami fan.
Yeah, and then the other game I didn't mention, I just want to say I know the Steelers might be the weakest team in the playoffs this year, and I know the Bills just won the East and are playing red hot. If you look back at the last few years when Pittsburgh's played Buffalo, the Steelers have played
They've
them
gotten them.
really tough, especially even with bad quarterbacks. So I would not count out Pittsburgh at all if that's a low scoring game. Of course, not having TJ Watt, though, I think is going to make things incredibly difficult for the Steelers. But let's talk about the teams who didn't make the playoffs, and let's start, Rahill, with the New York Giants, who close out the year with a great win against the Eagles. But the quarterback questions loom, and we end up essentially in the same spot that the Giants were at the end of last season in terms of personnel, with the questions about who's the quarterback going to be and is Saquon Barkley going to stay?
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting offseason because there's a lot that the Giants have to figure out. Number one, are they going to, whether you like it or not, Daniel Jones is going to be back. I don't know when he's going to be back because of the ACL tear, but he's going to be back. There's no way they're going to cut bait with him after 1 year into that 4-year contract. So the question is, do you draft a quarterback at where you are at 6, or do you try and take another player? Do you try and take, Marvin Harrison if he drops there, a wide receiver, a running back, maybe an offensive lineman? And obviously now the questions are there's also major questions around Tyrod Taylor. His contract is up. Do you want to bring him back for another year? I personally would not mind having Tyrod back as maybe the starter to open the year if you want to take a young quarterback. But the main question is Saquon Barkley. So you franchise tagged him last year, and we don't know what his worth is this year, okay? Because he had another good season, but again, he missed 4 games in the middle of the season. And I would love for Saquon to be back, but the Giants have to play this smart. If he wants more than $13 million, I think it's better that you let him go somewhere else. If you're able to negotiate for 4 years, $12 million each year, I think that's a good deal. But anything more than that, I'd be very hesitant to give Saquon Barkley a contract. They also have to figure out now what they want to do at D coordinator because there's no Wink Martindale anymore. So we're going to see, but I am happy with the way they closed out the season because I saw in 2017 and in 2020 where they quit on Ben McAdoo down the stretch. 2020, they completely quit on Joe Judge. They did not quit on Brian Dable. They were 2-8. They had that 3-game win streak. And let's be honest, you finished 6-11. That Bills game probably should have been a win. That Jets game should have been a win, and maybe the Rams game. So if they play better in those 3 games, they could be sitting at 9-8, despite everything that has happened this year. So nevertheless, it's going to be very interesting. I'm still extremely confident in this team because of the coaching ability. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions. I don't know what they're going to do in the draft. I have no idea what's going to happen. So I'm kind of I'm just on for the ride at this point because there's really no point in me predicting what's going to happen because I have no clue. They can go in so many different directions.
Yeah, and Saquon's in a weird spot because we know it's been talked about a lot that the worth of the running back position has really dropped over the last few years. And you look back at Dalvin Cook in free agency last year, and I think there's a lot of parallels in the career structure between Cook and Saquon Barkley when Cook hit the market last year, and then he ends up with the Jets and barely plays and ends up getting cut by them by the end of the season. So I think it's going to be really difficult for Saquon depending on what he demands. And it's crazy to think he's only been in the league 6 years. He's now one of the older running backs in the league, besides like Kamara and Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry might be done. So it's kind of crazy, really, to put that all in perspective. But if you're the Giants right now, it's just a tough spot because he gave Daniel Jones these $40 million. And I know everybody was saying to me, well, that's the quarterback market right now. You got to pay that much money. Well, I still don't think you should have overpaid that much for Daniel Jones. And now you're stuck with him. Now you're stuck with him on your roster. And now, I mean, you could draft a quarterback. Like you said, you could start the season and keep Tyrod Taylor. But I think the Giants are just in a really awkward spot right now. And I don't really know what direction they're going to be able to go here. And in the draft, I don't know who's the best fit for the Giants. I feel like if they draft Drake May, it's Daniel Jones all over again, a kid from the ACC who might be a little bit overrated. And I really don't know what the Giants are going to be able to do. So there's also a lot of teams drafting before them that are in need of a quarterback and could go that direction. So could be slim pickings for the Giants once they come up on the clock anyway. So I'm interested to see how it's all going to work out. But the Giants obviously look like they'll be sticking with Brian Dable. A couple of teams making some coaching moves. The one that's most surprising coming today, Mike Vrabel out in Tennessee. And some people are calling it surprising. I don't really feel that way because I think Mike Vrabel's going to be the coach of the New England Patriots within 1 to 2 weeks. I think he's going to replace Bill Belichick there. You know, there's the relationship. He played for the Patriots. He's still a very good coach, very capable. I think the Titans, as a franchise, are just trying to reset, which is why they're mutually parting ways with Derrick Henry. I think the time with Ryan Tannehill is over and Vrabel is out as well. So I think they're going to stick with Will Levis, bring in some young talent, and try to find a new coach. But as much of a surprise it might be that Vrabel lost his job with the way he's performed, especially before the last 2 years, 4 straight winning seasons, coach of the year 2 years ago, I'm not all that surprised because I think he's not going to be out of a job for long, and I think he's going to be the coach of the Patriots before the end of the month.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the Patriots obviously is the most likely. We still don't know what's going to happen with Belichick. The way Belichick is talking looks like it's not going to be a mutual parting ways. They're going to have to fire him. So that's going to be a main thing. But Vrabel screams Patriots head coach all over him. The only thing about the Patriots bringing in Mike Vrabel is, let's say you do bring in Vrabel as your new head coach. He is still a defensive-minded guy. There was nothing wrong with the Patriots defense this year. It was all about the offense. So obviously Mac Jones is not going to be the quarterback anymore. You're going to need a new quarterback. So the issue the Patriots are stuck with is whether do you want to keep Belichick and then sign a QB like Russell Wilson in free agency, or do you bring in a completely new head coach and then have him help pick the quarterback and then go from there? So I don't really know if I trust Vrabel when it comes to developing a young quarterback just because he's a defensive-minded head coach. They're going to have to try and figure out – they're going to have to completely scrap what they do right now on offense because the Patriots' offense is absolutely putrid. But if you look at the defense, I mean, they lost a game to the Giants 10-7. They lost a game to the Colts 10-6. They lost a game to the Chargers 6-0. There was really nothing wrong with the defense. So do you stick with that defensive structure and you go looking for a new offensive coordinator, or do you give an offensive-minded guy the head coaching job? I don't know. I think the most likely thing is Belichick goes and they bring in Vrabel, or they keep Belichick. Those are the really two options I see for the Patriots.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Bill Belichick's decision-making on who to run the offense hasn't been
That's
great.
the main.
Yeah, last year, I mean, you got a special teams Joe Judge and defensive Matt Patricia calling plays. Like, what is that?
They completely destroyed. Then those two completely ruined Mac Jones. You saw his rookie season, the way he took 3 to 4 steps backwards. Then they started bringing in Bailey Zappi. It completely wrecked his psyche, and now he's damaged goods now. He'll probably maybe go somewhere else. Hopefully, he gets a fresh start. Kind of what he needs, but it's almost like partially the Carson Wentz Philadelphia situation. How the man is just broken. The man is broken in the current situation that he is in. He needs to go somewhere else, and so that they need to figure. So I assume a new quarterback will be coming in. I don't know whether they want to keep Bill. And another main issue with Bill is his draft record. We all know Bill Belichick has a lot of say in who the Patriots draft. And when you look at Bill Belichick, the GM, compared to the coach, it's absolutely horrible. You look at the guys he's passed up on. I mean, N'Keal Harry over DK Metcalf a couple of years ago. There are so many draft misses with the New England Patriots in the last few years. It's really unbelievable. And it's only now coming to light because you don't have Tom Brady to make those guys look good. So,
yeah, I think you put it spot on right there. Tom Brady definitely made the roster look better than it actually was constructed, and they don't have that safety blanket anymore, and they haven't now for 4 full seasons, and just the one good year to show for it with Mac Jones and nothing the last 2 years. One more team I want to talk about that's made a lot of changes over the last couple of days is the Washington Commanders. Now, Tim's not here in this episode to berate Sam Howell, but Ron Rivera's out, and then they make new leadership changes in the front office, and for some reason, Bob Myers from the Warriors is coming over. What is he going to sign Festus Ezeli? I mean, I don't really know what he's going to bring to the table. And I mean, Magic Johnson's in the ownership. It makes no sense. But I think Washington has potential, and they definitely have some pieces, but they just have not been able to put anything together of substance over the last 3 years. And at this point, Ron Rivera, nice guy, but the time has come that they needed to make that change.
Yeah, Ron Rivera is Ron Rivera is I think he's a good head coach, but it was clear his defensive mind his defensive backbone was completely gone. I mean, you look at the Commanders' defense. Remember the Commanders, the year they won the year they went 7-9 and backed their way into a a horrible NFC East division title. It was the back of their defense. They had one of the best defenses in the NFL with Chase Young and all those young guys. But since then, the Commanders' defense has been absolutely horrible. I think they were worse. I think they were dead last in almost every single stat category this year. So they had to get rid of Ron Rivera. I think Eric Bieniemy, he's going to get the head coaching job. I think he did a decent enough job with the offense. He's got a great offensive mind. Obviously, you kind of see now the difference in Casey's offense when he was there and now that he's gone. So they're going to have to figure out. And again, listen, I mean, do you take Sam Howell or do you draft a quarter? They're in prime position to take a top quarterback if they want. So are they willing to scrap Sam Howell? I mean, we both know how much Tim absolutely despises Sam Howell. He has never been on the hype train. And credit to Tim, he had been proven right because Sam Howell, toward the end of the season, really when he went up against good competition, stunk for the most part. I mean, he had that good game against the Eagles, but now you look at the Eagles defense, what it's turned out to be.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he lost his job by the end of the year too with Brissett. He only got inserted the last couple of weeks because Brissett got hurt.
So yeah, so I think they're in prime position to take a quarterback. I think they will. I think Eric Bieniemy is a great coach to help develop a young quarterback with his offensive mind. So that's kind of the situation for Washington. But yeah, they need to. I have no idea what the whole Bob Myers thing. They're just trying to get away, just clean out everything of the dysfunctional Dan Snyder era with anyone in the front office. Obviously, bringing in Magic Johnson helped. Even though Magic Johnson doesn't really know football, everyone loves Magic Johnson. He's a great face. So I don't know. Again, as you said, they still have good pieces. I think they will be improved next year than they were this year. I really don't see how they get any worse from this season. But yeah, I don't really know. I think Washington, maybe I see them like 6-7 games would be a positive season the next coming season. But yeah, we're going to see. Washington's always one where they're always trying to get away from the dysfunctional history. And I guess bringing in Bob Myers is a way of doing that. I don't know.
Well, the next few weeks, the coaching carousel is going to be active. One last point I do want to make. Mark Davis, you better not mess this up again. You should have kept Rich Bisaccia 2 years ago.
Yeah, they have to keep.
You got to keep Antonio Pierce.
I mean, the way they played toward the end of the season, you got to keep Antonio Pierce.
It's like you can't do this again. You can't do it twice in 2 years where you let go of a really good interim head coach just to bring in a bad head coach. You did it already after you got rid of Gruden. And Bisaccia should have gotten the job, and instead they go with Josh McDaniels, and that blows up in their face. Now you get somehow another excellent interim coach. Give Antonio Pierce the keys and let him.
Yeah, he deserved it. He deserves that job.
Yeah. Let's go to the NBA for two quick topics. So we're talking about Bob Myers. So the Warriors have not had the best season. They've been floating in and out of the play-in spot. Steph Curry's had a great year, but besides that, it's been a mess. Klay Thompson really looks washed at this point. Andrew Wiggins has taken major steps backwards over the last 2 years since that finals run when Golden State got the ring. And then you got Draymond Green, who's choking Rudy Gobert, punching Yusuf Nurkic, getting suspended. Apparently, Steve Kerr comes to his house. They're crying in the backyard together, and now Draymond Green's back. So I've never thought Draymond Green brought all that many assets to the basketball court to begin with, and especially now at this age, the stats just aren't there. And the Warriors, the West, I think, is simply too good for them to make any headway.
Yeah.
And I think this team is in serious danger of not even making the play-in because I think the Lakers are going to rise up before the end of the season and push them above. And everybody else that's in the top 10 right now, I don't really see fading back. I think the Warriors are the weakest of all those teams. So I really don't see a path for Golden State right now to even get a chance to make the play-in.
Yeah. I mean, Listen, prime Draymond Green. I mean, prime Draymond Green when he won the Defensive Player of the Year, he was kind of the emotional spark plug of the team. He was the one that gave him that ferocity and intensity. But the last couple of years, let's be honest, he's been more trouble than it's worth. All right. I mean, the whole Sabonis thing where he got suspended, that didn't really end up blowing up in their faces because they won the series. But then I think people completely forget. I mean, people forget Chris Paul is on their roster. Well, I mean, Chris Paul has done absolutely nothing, and now he's hurt again. So I really didn't understand what the point in bringing Chris Paul in. I mean, I know we had talked about it before, and I said Chris Paul can help because he can help with the ball movement and less turnovers. But Chris Paul is clearly over the hill. He has done. I've been saying it for the last 3 years. Klay Thompson, he is done. He is washed. The two Achilles injuries have completely robbed him of the back end of his career. He is done. You're going to waste Steph Curry, who still is probably the best point guard in the NBA. I mean, you're going to waste his talent because he can drain 13 threes, but that's not going to help when you can't play defense down the stretch. And I mean, we can talk about how many leads they have absolutely blown and collapsed. I mean, I don't know what really to say about the Warriors. I mean, they don't really have a good roster outside of Steph Curry. I mean, you look at this roster. You talk about Andrew Wiggins. They gave him that huge contract after the finals run, and he deserved it. But since then, he has completely fallen off a cliff. You haven't seen the development of guys like Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe he gets more minutes now. And you look toward that end. I mean, James Wiseman, remember, he was supposed to be something. He went to the G League. I don't even know where he is now.
Oh, he's with the Detroit Pistons, which is another lovely story.
All right. You might as well be with the G League if you're with the Detroit Pistons. But yeah, so at this point, I don't really know. And like you said, people don't really, I mean, the West is really good right now. I mean, think about it. You've got Minnesota at the top, Minnesota and Oklahoma City at the top who are playing well. But even if they fade back, you would still think it would be tough for them to drop all the way below 500 when they're 15 to 14 games above 500. You've got the Denver Nuggets who are going to stay there because they're the Denver Nuggets. The Clippers, they're going to stay there now because James Harden, they figured it out. Kings are good. Luka and Kyrie have seemed to figure it out slightly. They're going to be there. Pelicans, even without Zion, him in and out of the lineup, they've got some good talent. I think Houston's got a very good roster as well. Everyone only knows him right now because of Dylan Brooks, but they've got a great roster there. Phoenix and LA at 9 and 10. I don't think they stay there for long. I have more faith that the Lakers will pull it together, but I think the Suns will also pull it together. And then you've got Utah and then Golden State. I don't really see a world where Golden State can pull above any of those teams, if we're being completely honest. I mean, it's sad to think that the only teams they're better than are the San Antonio Spurs, who absolutely suck, besides Wembanyama, the Portland Trailblazers, who they're in full rebuild mode as well, and the Grizzlies, who got a little life with John Morant, and now their season's over because he's having shoulder surgery that's going to end his year. So it's sad to see that the Warriors are that low in the conference. But as you said, I don't see them putting it together and taking on any of those 10 teams we just listed off. I think this season's a complete wash. We'll see what they do in the offseason, but for the Warriors, I think it's done.
Yeah, and I just want to say what a missed opportunity it was. And I know you're going to say missed. I mean, they still got a ring in the second, inclination of the Warriors, but they had a full-on rebuild the COVID season when they won like 12 games and Curry broke his hand and they get all these great picks and none of them worked out. This whole rebuild, Wiseman sucked. Moses Moody is not that good. Kuminga has not paid off. Maybe if he gets more playing time, we'll see him develop more. And then you got Jordan Poole, who then gets shipped off to Washington. So, like, all of these young guys that they brought in who were supposed to be next up with the supporting cast around Steph and Klay, none of them have worked out. So now you're depending on an old group of an old Steph Curry, an old Klay Thompson, an old Draymond Green. And with as talented as the West is, and with how talented it continues to get, I mean, OKC is great, and they add Chet Holmgren. Houston with Şengün, they're really strong as well. Minnesota with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Plus, you got the Clippers, the Lakers, the Suns with box office names, and the defending champion Nuggets. You're not beating any of those teams. So they are in a tough spot right now. And I agree with you. I don't really see them rising to the occasion. Last topic, let's shift to the Eastern Conference for a second, because as it stands right now, there's a five-way tie between fourth and eighth between teams that are 21 and 15. And one of those is the New York Knicks, who made a surprising trade, which so far has paid off, but I still have my doubts. OG Anunoby comes in. The Knicks truly have the mid three now with him, Julius Randle, and Jalen Brunson. But you give up RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly in that deal. I really thought that those two were going to be saved for a trade for a much higher level player. Maybe Anunoby elevates the defense, but offensively, he's not much of a force. And I think while Anunoby might work out and is a good fit with that team, they gave up a lot in Barrett and especially Quickly, who had been one of the best sixth men in the NBA this season.
Yeah, okay. So the first reaction to the trade for me was I had no idea how to feel about it because losing RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly was an absolute gut punch. All right, regardless of what you said, I have an RJ Barrett hoodie. I still have it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it now, but it was a gut punch to lose both of them because they were fan favorites. Everyone loved them. However, let's break this down. RJ Barrett, the development, it never really happened. He never developed as a three-point shooter. And as much as we can knock OG Anunoby, he is I'd say a pretty good upgrade on offense. I think he shoots the three ball better, doesn't need the ball as much, and he plays top tier defense. And Tom Thibodeau is all about defense. And before the trade, the Knicks defense had really fallen off. They'd given up 140 points for a couple games in a row. So they needed some defensive help. They got that in OG Anunoby. So I have no issue with that part. The issue is obviously, as you said, Eddie, the Emmanuel Quickly one. He almost won Sixth Man of the Year. He's possibly your best shooter and your best player off the bench. Now, since you're losing him, I don't know if they're going to make a move at the deadline, but now you're going to ask your bench to get even deeper. Deuce McBride has started to get minutes. He's looked good. Josh Hart has always been pretty good off the bench. And Quentin Grimes, all three of them are starting to get a lot of minutes. So whether the Knicks are going to try and rock with those guys, that's fine because they still have a pretty deep bench. I still like that bench without Emmanuel Quickly. Obviously, losing Quickly is tough, but I like that bench of McBride, Grimes, and Hart because I think they all can play great defense as well. So whether they're going to make another move at the deadline to try and get some scoring, I've hearing reports that they were looking at Malcolm Brogdon, who beat out Quickly for Sixth Man of the Year. And another thing people don't realize is Quickly was going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And the Knicks were not going to shell out to give him a lot of money. He was going to take a bigger contract elsewhere to become a starting point guard because he thought he deserved that. And most teams at a good amount of teams, he probably would start for. So the Knicks maybe decided that, listen, we couldn't sign him at the end of last year. We don't think it's looking like he's not going to come back. Let's try and trade him and get someone else. Now, obviously, it's tough because those guys were seen to be in a move maybe for someone like a Donovan Mitchell, as you said, a higher level guy. And OG Anunoby is not a very well-known player. I mean, especially to people who don't really know the NBA. But overall, the trade has worked out so far. I think the Knicks are going to be in a fine position to avoid the play-ins right now. I'd still take them. All right, we'll see what happens with Indianapolis now. Obviously, no, because with Tyrese Halliburton's injury. But I still think they're a better team than the Orlando Magic. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I believe, just lost Mitchell. I believe they're a much better. I believe they're a better team than them. I don't see the Pacers staying afloat. So I think the Knicks will be somewhere in the 4 seed to 6 seed range. But I think it's going to be a similar outcome to last year. You win maybe the first round series. You go up against a team, whether it be Boston or Milwaukee or Philly, one of those top 3 teams, and you lose in the second round. I think that is where the ceiling is right now for this team. Maybe they make a few moves at the deadline and try and change that. But and again, obviously, they got the mid big 3. I don't classify Jalen Brunson as mid. I classify Julius Randle as worse than mid. But
it balances out.
It does balance out at the end of the day because Julius Randle. I mean, I have my own feelings toward Julius Randle, but right now that's where I see the Knicks at in almost the exact similar position as they were last year. So whether they try and make a move out of it, we'll see. But right now I see them in that 5 to 5 to 6 range, losing in maybe the second round of the playoffs.
My worry, though, is you mentioned you want to see them try to make some moves. I don't know what you have in terms of assets to
That's the
really.
that's
It's just picks at
that
this
yeah.
point.
That's the other issue. And that's kind of what the frustrating thing was. Because three years ago, what was the Knicks all about? It was about their young core, which was RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and Obi Toppin. Flash forward 2-3 years from now, all three of them are gone. You shouldn't have traded Obi Toppin. I didn't like the trade to Indy for Obi Toppin. Whether, I know obviously he just never really got the chance to develop because he didn't play consistent enough minutes. Because I believed when they made that deal, they weren't expecting to keep Julius Randle, and it just never worked out. So that's the main issue now you talk about, because the Knicks really don't have any other really pieces. Because even last year when they made the move for Cam Reddish, who obviously it's not working out in LA, but the whole philosophy was you've got this young core, you can mix in a couple picks, let's try and get a star. Now all of a sudden 2 years they're all gone, and you don't have a box office player at MSG, which is the main issue with the Knicks right now.
Yeah, and I don't really see that changing at this point, but maybe this group works out. Brunson, like you said, has had an unbelievable year, just won Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Congrats to Tyler Glass on winning our Sports Speak Fantasy Football League championship. I finished in last. More on that at a later date. Make sure to tune in on Friday. Matt Sims is going to be joining Tim and I. We're going to be talking about the NFL MVP debate and previewing Wild Card Weekend. So don't miss that one. Until next time, for Rahill Jaiswal, I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off here on Sports Speak Live. We'll talk to you on Friday.